Yes, thank you, Deborah. It's so nice to see you on the screen, and thank you all that you are, I think, interested in what is going on in Germany. So there's something going on. I'm not sure what you know about the Catholic Church in Germany. Exactly 7 months ago, I was invited for a talk on Tuesday, and I tried to tell you something about Cardinal Marx and why he resigned and why the Pope didn't accept his resignation. So now many things happened since then. Maybe that you know some of the cardinals, and I'm not very proud of them, some German cardinals. You may have heard of Cardinal Wölki of Cologne. He's out of office, but only for half a year, because he did very bad communication with sexual report in the Diocese of Cologne. That is supposed to be one of the biggest and richest dioceses in the world. You know probably Cardinal Müller. He has been head of the CDF for 5 years, but then he was dismissed from Pope Francis, and he's now giving very bad comments. I'm really ashamed of him, or we all are ashamed of him. And you may have heard of Cardinal Marx, the Cardinal of in Munich, where we live. He came to Munich in the year 2008. And you probably know Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Emeritus Benedict. And in 2005, when he was elected Pope, the yellow press in Germany had the head title, "We are Pope." So that's a German, that the German became Pope for the first time. But now, last week, no, actually yesterday, the same yellow press had the title, "We are gay, we are lesbian, we are church," because yesterday there was a coming out activity of homosexuals and lesbian and transgender people, and more than 100 people had their coming out. It was a very impressive documentary film, and they have published a manifesto in 10 languages. So there's something really going on in Germany. And
sorry, may I just add, it's all people who have a job with the church. So they're all dependent on that. And they also tell in this film we watched yesterday also, was a 60-minute film, where they also said that for many years, some even 40 years, held back telling anyone that they are living with a woman or with a same-sex partner, and what that really meant to them and what it means to them now to have the courage, to have found other people, to get the strength now, and so to tell it in the public, and of course in a way risking really losing their jobs. It's religious teachers, it is people working for the parishes, it's musical people, all sorts of people, priests. So that was quite a thing for them also. And probably for many, many people who watch it, we will still have to see what the reactions will be, really.
Thank you, Renate. And you probably have heard of Maria 2.0, so the women's organization, and we are working very close together with Maria 2.0. And they all were founded on the ground of We Are Church. So We Are Church is one of the oldest reform movement in Germany. We were founded in 1995 after a sex scandal in Vienna in Austria, next country to Germany. And so We Are Church became an international movement. And as Deborah said, last October, we celebrated our 25th anniversary in Rome, even at the time of the pandemic. So just to give you, to try a very short history, in 1995, there was a scandal in Vienna, and we had the positive answer, the 5 goals of We Are Church: more democracy, women's ordination, no forced celibacy, positive sexual teaching, and a message of courage and not a message of frightening in the church. But nothing happened at that time in Germany. It was in the year 2001 and 2002 in the United States, when the Boston Globe covered up sexual abuse. In Germany, they said, no, we don't have that problem. And in 2010, it was a Jesuits college in Berlin, in our capital, and that was really the opening of the scandal in Germany. But again, it took another 8 years that the German bishops had a report about sexual abuse all over Germany. It's the called MHG report from different universities, MHG. And actually, this report came to the result that the points of We Are Church that were written in 1995 are the risk points for sexual abuse and covering up in the church. And then in 2019, 1 year after this really shocking report, the German bishops started the synodal path. You may have heard of it. The synodal path is started by the bishops, but together with the official lay organization in Germany, the Central Committee of German Catholics. Actually, We Are Church, we are not part of that, but we are watching that. We are working together with them. We try to push them forward, and we try to support all the reform movement. So that is the overall history. And last week, Thursday, the 20th of January, there was a press conference where a law firm who did already a report in 2010, but last week they published another report, a report for the Diocese of Munich since World War II. And that was really shocking. And in this second report, they also named the people who are responsible for covering up the sexual abuse cases. And one of the most prominent persons is Cardinal Ratzinger. And there were 4 cases in that time, and the most important case is the case of the priest called Peter Hullermann. And I think in the English world, you name the person. In Germany, you only say priest H. You don't publish the name in Germany, but everybody knows about him. And actually, and that is really interesting, he was a priest when my wife was a young girl in her parish, and so she knows him very well. And there's a special 350-page report only about this priest, and he abused in his lifetime 29 people, 29 minors, young boys. And the question is, did Ratzinger know about that? Because that priest came from another diocese to Munich, and here he did a therapy, and the therapist said, this guy, this priest, cannot work in a parish together with boys, with young girls, and with youngsters. But very soon he was a priest, and he was working with youngsters, with minors, and so on and so on. And there were now cases again and again. And the question is now really, did Ratzinger know about that? In the first report in 2010, everybody had the impression Ratzinger didn't know about that. And the general vicar of that time, he said, oh, it was me I was responsible. But now in this second report that was published last week, the general vicar said he was pressed to say that he was responsible, and it came out from the notes of a meeting in the year 2000, in the year 1980. Thank you. Sorry, it came out from the notes of that Ratzinger was present at a meeting when they talked about this special priest. But in December, Ratzinger wrote a 82-page report for this great report, and he denied that he was present at that meeting. And yesterday, he had to confess that he had lied, that he didn't say the truth. So the final, what is really, I think all the moral authority of Ratzinger is really now falling down. And all the inside relationship that was still going on under the time of Pope Francis is really broken. I think we are really at a very historic moment of time in our church. But it took so long, 27 years for us, and it's so long for the people who were affected by sexual abuse. But finally, the system of Ratzinger is broken. I think that is now a really very important time, not only for us in Munich, but for Germany, for the synodal path, and I think for the whole world, because all the pressure, the fear about before the fear of Ratzinger, you can forget about it. That is my my introduction, and I'm happy to answer your question, and Renate too. We are happy to answer your questions, and I think we should try to see what can we do from that, because in a week's time, in 10 days' time, there is the third General Assembly of the Synodal Path in Germany. And you also know about the synodal process worldwide of Pope Francis. How can we bring the church forward? How can we build up the church from the bottom? Because the top is really gone. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christian and Renate. So we're going to open it up for questions. And if you have a question for Christian or Renate, you can put your little hand up with the reaction button. If you don't know how to do that, you can do like this, and we can just have a discussion. I want to start off a little bit with, I know you don't have a crystal ball, if you will. You can't see into the future necessarily, but what kind of implications do you think this has, Christian, for the papacy and the legacy of Pope Benedict?
Pope Francis, you mean?
Well, no, for Pope Emeritus Benedict, like so many things that he's done, and I mean, so many ways that he punished dissenters, and I just wondered if you thought if you have a sense of what might happen because of the fact that he's responsible, and he was responsible for this covering up these cases, but also now, as it seems, lying actually about even his own report back to this law firm.
He was responsible, and that we urge, and we write press releases, and we make demonstrations, and we ask Pope Emeritus Benedict Joseph Ratzinger, you have to confess that you have been guilty, and you should ask the victims to forgive him. Mm-hmm. And even if he had known about this or not, but he has to take responsibility. And I think he made one big step, and that was acknowledged by many, that he stepped down in 2013. Mm-hmm. And that was acknowledged by many. But now, if he's not confessing that he was guilty, his roof, so his authority is really diminished.
What do you think Pope Francis will do?
I just wanted to give some details, and Renate told me I should talk about that. So that was in the time of Ratzinger in the 1980s. Mm-hmm. In the year 2001, he started the papal secret. Mm-hmm. And so he asked that all the reports about sexual abuse from all over the world should be brought to the CDF in Rome. It's a very small bureaucracy, and they are not they're not able to cope with that. But so that was really, I think that was really his biggest guilt. Pope Emeritus Benedict, he met with victims, but he started a system of covering up, because he took everything to Rome. And I think that is really, he's no great theologian. He should not be become benefied or so. No, and I think that is over now. You're asking about Pope Francis. I think Pope Francis, he did what he could do, but he had a strong opponents of cardinals in the Roman Curia. But I hope that this time is now over. You can think of Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Müller, Archbishop Vigano. There's so many, Cardinal Zara. There's so many opponents. Normally, the cardinals should fight for the Pope and not against the Pope. I really hope that this will change, and that this will change very soon, that Pope Francis can really do what he wants to do and what is necessary to do. I think in many, we could have a long discussion, did Pope Francis good, or was he not so good over the last 8 years? I think he did many fundamental things. In the times of Pope Benedict, you were not allowed to talk about women's ordination. And now there are so many bishops, at least in Germany and hopefully in other countries too, they just say the question is open. We have to deal with that question. And the other example Renate gave about the out in church, the coming out of homosexuals, and there are so many things who are now open, who can be discussed, but it's the time since 2013, I think that was really the Wendepunkt, the changing point, when really we got the spirit of freedom, of open discussion, of theological discussion, of the open debate in the church. And now we have to work on that.
Can I just add?
Oh, go ahead.
I think it's very difficult to predict, of course, what will happen sort of to the reputation of Ratzinger, especially when he's dead, which probably won't be so much far in the future. Of course, it will damage somehow his reputation, I think. But for us, it is very important that it's become clear again that these 5 goals of We Are Church, what we are based on, and probably most of our reform groups, and also now the synodal process, that those are the 5 key issues that have to change in the church to make the church a safer place for young children, for all those people being in some sort of dependency of these sort of authorities. And so we all hope that now for the synodal path in Germany, this really will sort of push it forward, that because there's been a big fear in Germany also that once this process in Germany is over, that they of course will have to send sort of the results to Rome and say, look, these are sort of our suggestions, very humbly sort of, and that Rome then says, well, very interesting, but we will see what will happen worldwide and so on, and we'll just put it again in the drawer, as they did in the 1970s already after Second Vatican Council. You know, we had, for example, a big process here in Germany, and nothing happened in the end, and a lot of people got frustrated then. But so this will not be so easy now again. And also our bishops, also the chairman of the German Bishops' Conference, Ratzinger, he already said now that we will do everything we can, really, because he knows also from so many people that they really, especially also since last week, get asked by their families, by their friends, their colleagues, why do you still stay in this terrible church? Sort of, you know, the people really have to justify it now. And that he really can see sort of his responsibility and sort of the responsibility of the church leaders, what they have also done sort of to all the members in the church, and what damage there has been done. And so that he at least really promised now that they will try to do everything. And I hope this is the same for the worldwide process also, that the church has been damaged so badly now that hopefully some people who still have been sort of waiting and not being very courageous, but actually being slightly in favor of reforms, that they will become stronger, more courageous, also among the bishops and the cardinals, and that they will come forward now.
Has the head of the German Bishops' Conference made an official statement about this report and Ratzinger's response? Has he made anything official?
Well, what I know is just what he said last Sunday in a sermon, which was in the papers. And on Thursday, so the day after tomorrow, Cardinal Marx, who is now the cardinal here in this diocese, where also this report was published now, he will do a press conference this Thursday. He didn't say anything last week. He just sort of said, well, now he sort of accepts the results and so on, that he will talk about it this Thursday. And I think then we will know a little bit more. Also, if some people will have to resign, if he will offer his resignation again, one doesn't know. A lot of people say, well, what will that change really? I mean, he at least is one who has worked now for reforms, definitely. Wouldn't it be better if he stayed on? But one will have to see.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question from someone who said, how much do you think the issue of sex abuse in the priesthood and elsewhere is connected to our system of the sacrament of reconciliation? If we had to confess to the people we have offended and not just to God, I believe this would bring about real change. I don't know if you have a response about the sacrament of reconciliation and how I think you have actually called for the guilty parties to say, you know, to make that statement of, you know, I'm sorry, I failed. I think you have said that as We Are Church Germany, haven't you? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And I think we also said it would be a big example around the world for all those bishops, cardinals, and priests, of course, as well, who have sinned in that way. If the Pope Emeritus would have the courage and the moral strength to say openly and publicly, I'm very, very sorry what happened under my responsibility. It doesn't really matter now so much if he was present or not present. That, of course, the responsibility becomes bigger or a little bit smaller, but still he was the boss, so to speak, you know, right. And so it was his responsibility, and it's very doubtful that he didn't know about it. And so if he could say that publicly, I think he would win a lot, really.
Yeah, right.
Now he's losing.
Yeah.
Actually, if the regulations of Pope Francis about bishops' responsibility, if they would have been active in the times of Ratzinger, when he was Pope Benedict, at that time, then he would have had to resign. So Pope Francis changed a lot. Pope Francis abolished this papal secret. Pope Francis made the International Conference about Sexual Abuse. There were some difficult things about that conference in early 2019. But anyhow, he really tried to organize fighting sexual abuse. And the Jesuit Hans Zollner in Rome, and he tries to bring this up. But that is mainly prevention of sexual abuse. I think we also have to look at the history, and we really ask the bishops and many bishops to take responsibility. Many bishops have been, before they became bishop, they have been auxiliary bishop, they had been general vicars, they had been in an office that was responsible for the priests. And so I think many bishops may have to resign, but we say it's more important not to resign, but it's more important, I think Renate said that before, it's more important to change their mind and to feel responsible. And as like Ratzinger, also there's another former Archbishop of Germany, and they don't feel that they did something wrong. So it's really the clericalism, the feeling that they had the power and they didn't think of the victims. I didn't think of the people in the parish, and so it was only they were really in the clerical system. But this clerical system now is broken.
Good. So we have a question from someone, Christian, and Renate says, could a Christian speak about the film Defender of the Faith? Do you know this film? Or Verti, I don't know how to say the German, des Glaubens? I don't know if you can look in the chat box. It's by producer Christoph Rohl, that debuted in Rome in February 2000, I don't know, 22 maybe. At the time, no, it wouldn't be 22, it'd be 21. At the time of the Papal Summit on the sexual abuse of minors, many of us from survivors advocacy groups were present and founded a powerful documentary. Also, Cardinal Marx met with these advocacy groups in person at the hotel. That was the central meeting place for our groups. Is this documentary available to us here in the US? So this is from Mary Margaret Moore. So do you have a comment about this film at all, or?
The film is very, very good. The film is very important. Actually, the author of the film is not a Christian, but he knows about history, and the documentary is very well. I can show it now. It's behind in my small office. I will try to ask Christoph Rohl how he can make it available in the United States. We actually have some. Renate is just showing it. It's very good, and actually it's in German, but it has English subtitles, so it's very well for you. I will try to send you some copies on. I will try to ask Christoph. Okay.
Great, wonderful. Do you what do you think is going to be the implications or the fallout for Cardinal Marx? Is he pretty much going to be okay? What's going to happen to his authority now that he's actually been named in this report as well? What do you think?
Nobody knows, because when he resigned for the first time at Pentecost last year, he didn't talk to anybody in the diocese. He didn't talk to the auxiliary bishops. He didn't talk to his own personnel. So all of them were really shocked by his decision. So nobody knows. Maybe he steps down again, and nobody knows. The funny thing is, the more you are away from Munich, you think Cardinal Marx is a reformer, a strong, big reformer. But the more you come here to Munich, you say, he's saying words, but there are no deeds. And actually, the reform groups here in the Diocese of Munich, we asked him and we made a petition to him. He said, okay, Cardinal Marx, you don't want to become bishop anymore. You don't cling to the office. Pope Francis but said you should work again for reform. But he doesn't do it. And even very small things like that lay people could preach in the Holy Mass or so. Nothing. I think he's really a lame duck at the moment. I think the best thing he did that he started the synodal path in Germany. He started that in the year 2019, but he has also his own history of covering up. When he was in another diocese in Germany, in the diocese of Trier, so that was not part of the actual report. The actual report was only for the Diocese of Munich. So, but there are other cases Cardinal Marx has to face and has to take responsible for.
Perhaps I just tell you about an example which happened because of this priest Hollermann now, who was in a parish for 20 years and abused a lot of children there. It was after, when he was in my parish in Munich. Nothing really happened there. It happened afterwards. And a friend of mine who studied with me religious education, she and her husband were very active in that parish when it happened. And the whole parish then really fell apart afterwards, because some still tried to believe this must be a misunderstanding and whatever. He's such a charismatic priest, you know, he was lovely with all the youth. They had 150 altar boys and girls and so on, the classic thing. And another part really sort of tried to come to terms with that they also did not believe the victims. There was one victim who sort of tried to sort of talk about it, and people didn't believe it. And my friend and her husband, they started an initiative 2 years ago. It's called Initiative Sourdough. And they chose also this name to say, well, perhaps it could be also an example. I don't know, also perhaps for people in America, because of course, unfortunately, it's a worldwide problem. And Cardinal Marx, they asked him then, because they said, well, you also have some sort of responsibility in this case, because that man was still around till the year 2020, actually, when Cardinal Marx was already here. We need you in this whole process of coming together again as a parish, of moving on, of coming to terms also with the guilt we feel towards the victims, with the responsibility we also have as people who were active in the parish and did not really look at it closely enough and did not protect those children. We need you as a part in this whole thing to come to our parish, and that we all have a meeting there, and that you also apologize for not being there for us and for those children. And it was a long process, but then he came. Last July, he came to this parish. It was a big thing, of course, and in the papers and so on. And he sat with those, with people from this initiative, and they talked about it, and he promised them that if they need any psychological help also now, any guidance in whatever way, that the diocese will organize that for them, will pay for that they as a parish can find again a path to move on and to go through this crisis as a community. And so this is the process they are in now. And also they have had many interviews in the papers now when this report came out last week, because in a way they also played a very active and important role, that there's been pressure put on now, really, that this all comes out into light. So I think this is a very positive example. And in that respect, at least Cardinal Marx tried to show also that he does take responsibility, at least in a small way, for this. And perhaps this could be an example for others also, that the parishes who are badly damaged by this abuse as well, even if it's not their own children, but the whole group who sort of believed in it, who in some way perhaps supported this priest, how can they come to terms with it and move on and be also an example then to other people who say, well, look at those, they call themselves Christians, and then that's what happens in their community. How do you manage with this guilt and with these terrible things happening among you? So I think it's called Initiative sourdough, Initiative Sauerteig.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead. Do you have more to say, Christian? Go ahead. It's like
I just wrote it in the chat, so you can find the website for those who know a little bit German.
Okay. So we have a question from someone who says, do you think if we had women in the priesthood, this abuse could have been covered up?
Once again, please, sorry, Deborah, just say it again, once again, please.
Sure. The question is, do you think that this abuse could have happened and the cover-up if we would have women in the priesthood? So if we had women priests, do you think this could have been covered up in the same way?
No. And I think there are also experts. There's an expert, a female professor in Rome. Actually, I don't know her name at the moment. She said that if there would have been women in church leadership, so this there's a German word, Männerbündnische, so that men click together, that this comradeship of men, this wrong comradeship of men, that would not have been possible. So that is really, and the MHG study in 2018, the overall German study, they said the lack of women in church leadership is one risk factor for sexual abuse and for covering up.
So we have a question from someone who says, let me see here. How do we move forward in terms of dismantling our current seminary system and rebuilding with a more effective screening system? Now, you know, this is definitely true in the United States, that the number, the kinds of candidates and the number of candidates continues to shrink. And so we just really aren't getting the best people for the priesthood. And I don't know if you're having the same experience in Germany, but you know, that the basic question is, how do we change this, this system?
That was one of the results of this Munich report, that in the 1950s and 1960s, there were many more seminarians. And so the bishops and the general vicars, they could say, no, you're not right for priesthood. And in the 80s and in the 90s, there is such lack of priests, so they really took everybody. And now there are large dioceses with no priest ordination next year or this year or so. So there is really now a lack of priests, and it's not only the number is lacking, the quality is lacking. And in general, in We Are Church, in the reform movements, Maria 2.0, the question is really, do we need priests, or do we need the priests in the old style? So we need people who can do jobs that are necessary for the community, for the parish. So we can do priestly offices, priestly work, but we don't want to have the priest, the old-fashioned, the old-style priest, who's really only a cleric, absent from the parish, forced celibacy, fighting with his own sexuality. No, we don't need these priests anymore. And there now are bishops, and I think that is very important. There are bishops because of the lack of priests. When there are years when they can't ordain any priest in their large diocese. The bishops now see something has to change. And actually, one of We Are Church, he is a counselor in one of the working groups of the Synodal Path, and he brought in the problem of married priests who are still priests, and he tries to bring them back to the church.
Thank
because
you. Go ahead.
Sorry, there was a time in Germany also when Cardinal Döpfner was the one who was still also in the Second Vatican Council, once an important counselor. And he then said several times when priests wanted to get married, let's put them into sort of the lay status very quickly so that they can work again in the church or be a religious education teacher. So let's not lose these good people, you know. And so now the problem really is that we've lost so many good men and haven't enabled women so far to do good jobs. So that is the whole structure that really has to change. And our hope is that this becomes more and more clear also to those people who at the moment still are the authorities who sort of can say, yes, let's go ahead and do it. And so definitely, I'm sure if women were also in leadership, it would be a far more natural environment. And of course, a lot more control sort of happen. It does also happen in families, we know. It happens in schools, it happens in sports clubs and so on. So it wouldn't be paradise, definitely not. But it would be
I agree with that.
A better situation.
Yeah, I think it would definitely change the possibilities, but we know that women religious communities have abused children and covered up. So there's no magic there, although there certainly is a question of equality. Someone is asking, what actual documented proof exists that Cardinal Emeritus Benedict attended that fateful meeting, which in turn directly implicates him? I think
there are minutes. There are minutes of this meeting, and in the minutes, there's a report about several things he talks about that only he could tell. And it also says that Cardinal Ratzinger reported on this and that, different issues, had nothing to do with our priest. But so he is named in these minutes talking about things during that meeting.
Yeah. And I think he's actually admitted it too, right? At this point,
yes, now
he's admitted it. Yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
But he that is really very strange. He said, "Oh no, that was only a typo." But that was really the main question about all this case of Peter Hallermann. And actually, that meeting it was the 15th of January in 1980. At that meeting, he had to report about the dismissal of Hans Küng.
Yeah. So tell us more about that.
No, you may have heard of the great theologian Hans Küng, who died last year, and he was punished from Rome, and he lost his professorship in the University of Tübingen in the year, and then he started the very good project of world ethos. And so Renate, my wife, she's a teacher and was a teacher of religious education, and she used his example, his information very often. Could I add just one information that might be not so well known in the United States? I think Germany, many of you may think, yeah, we are the land of Martin Luther. So we are the Protestant land, and this is really, I think, in general conflict between Rome, between the Vatican and the German Catholic Church. But really, the very good thing is about the Protestant Church. In Germany, we have state universities, and all of the professors of theology, male and female professors, they are working at state universities. And so they are in many ways independent of the church. So they should follow, they need certificate of the church, but then they are really free to do any research. And this is, I think this is really a very strong impact of the Catholic Church in Germany. And we have Protestant theologians, we have Catholic theologians, we have Orthodox theologians, now we have Islamic theologians, and we have Jewish theologians. So there's really at the universities, at the Free State universities, we really have a very good developed theology. And I think that is really a very good thing that should be used by the Catholic Church. But in Rome, they don't want to listen to theology from Germany. They are still, in many ways, at least in the times of Ratzinger, they only were interested in the Catholic power.
Okay.
Arturo tries to ask a question.
Yes, go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Arturo.
Hi, Christian. My name is Arthur, and I'm from Boston, so I know all about the expose by the Boston Globe in 2002. We had our Munich moment under cardinal law, so to speak. I have a question about the relationship between the German Catholic Church and civil society, particularly the police. I'm curious to know if any of these cases of clergy abuse that were in the report last week actually were reported to the police. Did any clergy go to jail? Or is there a strange relationship between the civil authorities and the German Catholic Church so that the police turn a blind eye, or as we say here, give the church a pass? So I'm really curious to know how thoroughly these types of criminal acts were pursued or not by the German civil authorities. And thank you so much for talking to us.
You're muted, Christian.
Thank you for the very good question. So the state authorities are too weak, and that is mainly because the churches, the Protestant churches, the Catholic Church, they are very important for the social system in Germany. They are running hospitals, they are running kindergartens, schools, homes for the elderly, and therefore up to now, there was no police or any other state agency that walked into the bishop's house and asked for the files of the priests. There are some priests who are in prison. There are some cases who were reported to the state, to the attorney. And I think it was in the year 2010, in a letter to the Irish Church, Pope Benedict asked the Irish Church, but I think it was also meant for all over the world, for the whole world. He asked to cooperate with the state authorities, but that is still too weak. And and therefore we are demanding, and the victims are demanding, that the state should take more responsibility, that's not the church should ask and should pay a law firm to do the report. It would be better if it would be done by a really independent company, and it would be done under the control of the government. There was one person in the German government, he was responsible for 10 years for this sexual abuse, and he resigned after 10 years because he was frustrated. He was only responsible for this, but no Secretary of State or whatever really in the hierarchy of the German government took this case, was interested. So we hope that the new German government, with many other problems like COVID and climate change, that the new church, the new government, the new German government, they are social democratic, liberals, and the Green Party, and they are more away. They are not the Christian democrats, so they are more critical to the churches. There might be a change. There hopefully is a change, and so we are church, and the victims are asking that the state should take responsibility.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for those questions. Now we have we're going to, I'm just, if anybody else has one last question, I'm glad to take it, but otherwise we're going to end this session because Christian does have this next meeting that we want to take to. So he needs to go to. So if there's any other questions, please raise your hand now or let me know and we can get that in. But otherwise we will say a thank you to our German friends here. And okay, so we'll just have a thank you. So thank you
for the invitation, and you can maybe that you can give our website, or you can give our email address. You can ask any question, and we would try to answer them. Now it's really very, as I said in the beginning, it's a historic moment of time. Mm-hmm. The problem is that many people who are still paying church tax in Germany, they are so frustrated and they don't have the patience anymore, and they will leave the church by hundreds, by thousands in the Diocese of Cologne and the Diocese of Munich. And I think that is really a pity, because we, Renate, myself, we are church. So actually we would like to build up a church from the grassroots, from the bottom again. But many people already have left the church or will leave the church very soon. So we really, just this morning, I wrote a position paper for the synodal path. Many reform movements, we say, the synodal path, the bishops have to do and have to bring change now, not next year, next month or so. It's really urgent. Otherwise, the Catholic Church in Germany will be like the Catholic Church in the Netherlands, will just be nothing. There's one hope, talking about money, like the churches in America. I think the churches in Germany, at least in West Germany, they are quite rich, and they do a lot of finance for the Vatican. And I think that sometimes money plays a role, and sometimes that the Vatican would be interested to have money from the German taxpayers, church taxpayers, and also money from donations, because of the German churches, the people in the German Catholic Church, they give many donations to social, Catholic, Caritas International, and so on and so on. Thank you for inviting me. And if there are any, you can invite me again, or I can bring you in contact. We have really marvelous theologians, male and especially female theologians. They really have so good arguments for women's ordination, so the bishops are naked compared to them.
Again, oh, thank you so much, Christian. Thank you, Renate. You know, you are my dear friends, and I just admire that you're doing all the work that you do in Germany and for the Catholic Church in general. So